Just when you think you have Eileen figured out, just when you're nicely settled into this movie's tone and characters, the third act comes in and delivers an insane, twisty turn of events. Some people might not like where this film ultimately ends up, but for me, I loved it. Thomasin McKenzie plays Eileen, a young woman who works at a youth prison facility in the 1960s. And Eileen, she's a weird one. She masturbates at work when no one is looking, she fantasizes about killing her drunk abusive father, she fantasizes about taking her own life, and she chews on chocolate candies only to spit them out moments later. One day, a new psychologist is hired at the prison and in walks in Rebecca, played by the amazing Anne Hathaway. Rebecca, by all accounts, is everything Eileen is not. Rebecca is polished, she's friendly, she's confident, and most importantly, she's not a weirdo. Eileen quickly becomes fascinated by Rebecca, and Rebecca becomes Eileen's orbit. Thus begins Eileen's obsession, evolving into a charming friendship between the two until it's not. And that's because the third act comes in and turns everything upside down. Thomasin McKenzie and Anne Hathaway are incredible in this movie. Anne Hathaway in particular is dynamite on screen, and you cannot take your eyes off of Rebecca. And most importantly, you like her. But Eileen is the most interesting character in the movie, which makes sense as she's the title role here. It's actually pretty depressing to watch Eileen struggle in her life. She clearly wants something more out of life. She wants to be free to express herself, free of her drunk father, and ultimately she wants to be free in being herself, but she can't. Instead, she masturbates in secret, well, sort of. She puts up with her drunk father, and she barely makes a peep at work. Eileen is a woman who so desperately wants to come out of her shell, but she can't, which is where Rebecca comes into play. As I said earlier, Rebecca is everything Eileen is not, and because of this, Eileen becomes obsessed. Eileen wants to be Rebecca. Rebecca expresses herself. Rebecca does what she wants, dresses how she wants, and sticks up for herself when she needs to. Luckily for Eileen, by nature of being around Rebecca, Eileen begins to feel some of that freedom in herself start to manifest. Although it never lasts long because her father makes it clear that she is a nobody loser. To be honest, I've never heard of director William Oldroyd, but I will be paying attention to who he is from this moment forward. That's because I really dug the look and feel of this movie. This movie is dirty, dingy, and cold, which pairs well with who Eileen is as a person. One could argue that Eileen herself is dirty, dingy, and cold. I also love how this film feels like a 1960s thriller. A lot of films try to be an homage to the past, but a lot of them can't really achieve it. But Eileen achieves it 100%, whether it's the score or even just the main titles of the film. William Oldroyd is clearly evoking thrillers of the past, and he nails it. So now I want to talk about the third act. I'm going into spoilers now, so if you haven't seen this movie, I strongly suggest you watch it and come back because Eileen has one of those endings that you don't want to know about. The joy of the third act is when you discover it for yourself. So with that being said, let's talk about it. Wow, I did not see that coming. I kind of expected something to happen because the tone throughout the film was suggesting that something bad was going to take place, but I figured it was going to be something like, oh, Rebecca isn't who she says she is type of thing. But nope, I was totally wrong. Although to my credit, I did figure out that Rebecca was not in her house after about 30 seconds into the scene. The cat was a dead giveaway, and then it's quickly followed by the fact that she couldn't find the corkscrew, so I just kind of figured they weren't in her house, which actually kind of made the scene more intense for me. But yeah, turns out Rebecca did not invite Eileen over just to have dinner. Rebecca invited Eileen over because she has the owner of the house tied up in the basement. What? The moment Rebecca says, "This is not my house, this is the Polk house, I have Mrs. Polk tied up in the basement," I was like, let's go. It's a wild twist of events that no one sees coming, and I love it. Rebecca convinces Eileen to go down in the basement to try to get a confession out of Mrs. Polk. And with an incredible monologue from Maureen Ireland, Rebecca gets the confession she desperately wants. So now she's got the confession, she can untie Mrs. Polk, they can say, hey, sorry about that, and they can all go on their merry little way. Oh my god, Eileen just shot Mrs. Polk. What begins as a simple little kidnapping has now escalated to murder. With Rebecca upset, she asks Eileen why she did it, and Eileen just says that Mrs. Polk's confession made her mad. Then Eileen confesses her love to Rebecca, and comes up with a plan to frame her father for the murder, and then they can both escape together and start a new life. Eileen really is a weirdo. Eileen takes the body back to her house and waits for Rebecca to show up. Rebecca never shows, so Eileen dumps the body in the woods and then hitchhikes her way out of town with a big smile on her face. So I can kind of tell that this ending was a little confusing for a lot of people, but my take on it was that Rebecca now thinks that Eileen is a psycho and a murderer, so she never shows up to meet Eileen. Eileen realizes this, so she comes up with a new plan to dump the body and hightail it out of town to start a new life on her own. I read the ending as like a catalyst for Eileen to finally become free. She's been desperate this whole film to be who she wants to be with no strings attached, and this murder has now done that for her. Now she can start a new life somewhere else and be who she wants to be. Another read, you could argue, although I'm not really convinced on it, is that the whole murder thing never actually took place and that it's just Eileen's wild imagination we're witnessing. I'm sure someone could argue that theory, but I don't know if I really buy it. In the end, I really dug the hell out of Eileen. If you love slow burn thrillers, then I think you'll love it too. With a creepy tone and dirty atmosphere, Eileen is a film worth the watch. Plus, it has incredible performances across the board. I highly recommend Eileen. That's it, folks. Thanks for watching, and cheers.